Holiday crafting is here, and look at this awesome pumpkin. It even looks like it's a few days past Halloween already. Hey, stick with Mike and I, and we're gonna show you how to make this awesome paper mache pumpkin. Let's get started. That is right. Today is going to be the simplest sewing project I ever do here because we're not going to do any sewing. You see the sewing machine's even gone. This is going to be a glue and go kind of project, and it is super easy. And if you've ever done paper mache before, really that's what we're doing here. But instead of using chicken wire, I'm going to use a balloon as my base. And instead of using anything fancy, I literally ran over to the dollar store and I bought a couple of these little bottles for, yes, $1 each of a basically Crayola or craft white glue. We're going to water this down, and that's going to be our base that I'm going to walk you through. So yeah, supplies wise, a couple of fun things. This giant pumpkin that you just saw, part of the great shape you're seeing is coming from the right choice in balloon, and then the other great portion of the shape is what you're seeing is coming from the way I'm going to show you how to use some twine and build some pre-character in it. You can probably already see the ridges in the pumpkin itself here. And so the large pumpkin, again from the dollar store, because I like to get my supplies and prep work there a little bit when I'm coming into this stuff. I bought these like puncher style balloons, right? I just can't stop. It's too fun. It's too fun. And so these ones here are larger, bigger, and that's what I used inside of here. I inflated it about 3/4 of the way so that I could still have it a little pliable and work with it that way. And then what we're going to make now using our awesome cocoa fabric, I just love, love, love this texture that we've got right here. It's just absolutely fantastic, right? And so it looks like a tweed, and we've got it in 50 different colors. And so this one here is made from our fantastic orange, and then we're going to make a small green pumpkin today to make it kind of fun that way. So at any rate, I wanted to use a smaller balloon, and this pack I think says these are 12-inch balloons. And one of the things I did realize, depending on what color fabric, it's going to get wet while we're working, so you might see a little color come through, maybe, I don't know. So we're going to use a green balloon inside of the green fabric. I happen to use an orange balloon inside of the orange pumpkin here, and it worked perfect. So step one, stretch out the balloon. If you've never inflated a balloon, take a big breath of hot air. And now I want to go ahead and inflate this, but I want it squishy enough that we're going to be able to tie the ropes around it. So we're going to go ahead and put ourselves a little quilter's knot in the end of our balloon. No clowning around with that statement. I just know, you know me. Okay, so then, and I also have a little tub cup here just to hold things still, make my life easy. And please note that I have already prepared and covered the set as much as I can here with some paper, because you know me, I'm going to make a mess. Now, the next supply I found real handy. This was from the hardware store, not the dollar store. But what I did find is some twine, and I'm going to use the green twine here because we're making a green pumpkin as well. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a little slip knot. So in order to get a slip knot, I just need a little loop tied at one end of my twine. Doesn't need to be anything fancy here. This will all be hidden later on, which is a good thing because I just made an ugly knot. Okay, so I've got my slip knot. And now I'm going to slip some of that twine back through there. And the reason I did this is I just want it to not move around. We're going to tie ridges. And so I tied mine around the little balloon tail there just so it wouldn't get away from me, secured. And then I'm going to go around basically the middle of the balloon, pulling it a little tight. And I found that I had to make 2 laps so that it would hold itself. Pulling that second lap around a little tighter. Then when I get back to this middle point, I'm going to now rotate, and we're going to go in a 90-degree opposite direction. And this is where that second lap really comes in handy. So once, this is how we're getting the ridges in our pumpkin. And kind of fight with it here a little bit. You might even want to go back the other direction. I'm sure this sounds wonderful in the microphone as well. I apologize. Not really. Okay, now that I've got it divided in fourths, I do need to divide it one more time in fourths. So I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Don't pull too hard that it pulls off a center, but boom, there it is. That's that character you're looking for right there. Squeak, squeak. Sorry, guys. And again, you can see I'm using this center point to go back here. And then the last one, we're going to go around this way. Bonus craft move there. Did you see that? Okay. So we're basically in the home stretch there. I need to carefully get myself some scissors. Got myself in a bit of a pickle or a pumpkin here. All right, let's see. So now, don't cut your balloon, or that would be frightening. I'm just going to go ahead and cut away from, and then I'm going to go ahead and just bring my cording underneath. And what I'm really doing is I'm coming under a couple of these different divisions I've already created, so it just doesn't get away from me. Tie it in. And then just one little knot to keep it from getting away from us here. And our balloon is the perfect little pumpkin shape. So we've got a little more character to it, and that's going to work terrifically as we get ready to prepare out our fabrics. So let me pick up my balloons and my twine real quick and set those aside. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get those strips of fabric ready. We're going to do that with a simple rotary cutter. And I had a little bit of the scraps from the green already. I'm sure we'll have to cut in more. But what I found is I wanted, with that large pumpkin, basically 20 to 22 inch strips that were roughly 2 inches wide up to 4 inches wide. And so for this smaller balloon, I can probably get away with the leftovers of this little scrap here to start with. And to show you that, basically what we're going to do is we're just going to cut the selvage off because we don't want that to show up. This is going to all be raw edge. Now I'm just going to safely free cut though, just some strips. And like I said, I want some wider strips. And I want some narrower strips. And we're just going to cut this all down real quick here while we're working. And we want to straighten those edges out there. So that's real nice and easy to work with, okay? And after we have our strips made, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to prepare our glue mixture. Well, like I said, I was just using some very inexpensive white crafting school glue kind of thing, dollar store, and we're going to use a bunch of it. And what I can tell you from my limited pumpkin mache experience so far is that what we want to do is have a really watered down version first, and then for every layer, and this particular layer, this particular large orange pumpkin has about 4 different layers I put on, let dry, put on, let dry, with each layer getting thicker and thicker in the glue so that the last layer was like a white paste almost, because as the glue dries, it's what thickens and hardens our fabric. So basically I've got, hopefully you can see in there, a decent amount, maybe 3 tablespoons worth at this moment. And then I also have just some regular water, and I'm going to add some water. And remember, we want this one really, really watery. And then because the glue's kind of thick, I do need to slowly start to stir it in. So don't splash around too much. Make sure you have stuff to cover all of your working spaces, because this glue will dry clear, but it will still dry on all of your fabric and sewing areas, which we don't really want. I'm using a foam brush and just a disposable plastic container, obviously. And we're just going to get this glue mixed up real nice here. Okay, now I've got a nice watery mixture there of my glue, and I definitely am going to be handling the balloon a bunch. So I'm just going to put on some real easy disposable rubber gloves. I love keeping these around in the wood shop because you know I do a lot of woodworking and painting as well. And yes, you can find these again at the hardware store. I really like these black ones because they feel extra cool in them. Okay, so then the other little thing this little cup is great for is it kind of gives me a way to balance my object, my balloon, my pumpkin to be with either the stem or the base in either direction, right? And allows me to not have it sticking down to my base of my table. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the strips of our green cocoa fabric that's just awesome. And what I'm really going to do is I'm going to use my thick strips and I'm just going to go right over the top of one of these twine kind of unions. And you can see, you almost don't even see the glue, but I want it on there. And you're going to wash the glue onto the balloon first, and then take one of your, let's just use our whitest strip first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it basically come up over the top and down around the bottom. First this way, and then you can see that the fabric is still dry. So now we're going to go ahead, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky at first with your first piece, because you really want to go ahead and laminate or get it wet enough that it starts to stick down to the balloon. And on the bottom, we're going to have a lot of our fabric layers crossing over, same with at the top. And that's how we form our cool little stem on the top of the pumpkin. And remember, a little bit of wrinkles and a little bit of ripples are going to give you that really cool natural pumpkin texture. Okay, and then as the balloon shrinks down over the next few days, because this is a couple of days worth of project here to get all the different layering and stuff, the balloon is also going to pull in and can add a little bit more texture and contour. So if you're getting too many large wrinkles, let me see if I can hold that so you can see it a little bit better. If you get really big large wrinkles, you can fold them over, or also note that probably means your strip is too wide for this round surface you're working on, and just make your next strips more narrow, or you can adjust the size of your strips as you go. Now I didn't put any glue up in here on my stem to be, so I'm just going to start dabbing lots and lots of this in here as I layer this piece of fabric over. And what I like to do is I just pre-build, I'm starting to pre-build my stem now by wadding that top up in a couple of areas, but now I'm really dabbing it with glue. I'm going to really soak it in with glue to thicken it up, but also the next layers will be going right over the top of this, okay? So now what I've done is this direction here, and I'm going to work my way around the balloon, and I'm going to go ahead and section out another section. Let's go and skip. Whoa, it's getting slippery already. Let's go ahead and skip a section. Now I'm going to grab a little bit, I'm going to set that down. That's 4 actually. Now I'm just going to grab kind of a little bit narrower strip, and I'm going to lay this on here this way, making sure that it comes all the way to the bottom and all the way over the top. So it's completely covering over that. And a reminder, there was already glue underneath there. So now I'm going to wash this glue up over the top. Always making sure there's glue between each layer. The under layer of the fabric and then the over layer of the fabric. And you don't have to work fast. And you certainly don't have to work carefully if you have your gloves on. Okay, now I can set that down there nice and secure. And again, wad up the top a little bit. Okay, now we're going to concentrate on the fill-in section here, and we're going to use another 2 strips. So I'm going to go ahead and wash on some more glue. And I'm going to take one strip and lay it so it overlaps slightly onto the first fabric. Comes around, and then I'm tucking it in here. And I'm going to wash this one on first before I put the next one on over the top of it. Having that other little cup down there really makes it easy. And it took me a couple layers with the big orange pumpkin to figure out that having something down there other than just setting it onto the paper was actually very helpful. So that's a little trick I learned. Much more of a quilter than a pumpkin mache artist for sure, but you know, we all have things we can learn in life. I think it's important to learn our all-purpose crafting skills here. And if you're really into paper mache, you might be thinking, well, do I have to go both directions with this? A lot of times we layer and layer and go all different directions, and you certainly could. It would make it stronger and more rigid over time. But you know, with my purple pumpkin, or purple, it's orange. I'm not colorblind. With the orange pumpkin here next to me, I really just did all the fabrics running top to bottom, north to south that way. Okay, we got one last strip to put in here until you really see the idea, and then I will finish this up and come back with some more information in a moment on how to do the stem and the finish up work. As I may have mentioned before, the more layers of glue and or fabric we use, the stronger, more rigid our little pumpkin will be when it's all finished. So I want to point out a couple of things while I was working, while you were probably out getting a snack or something. That's what I would have been doing. Is I did run a little short on glue, so I just took more glue, squirted it into my bucket, added some more water, mixed it up. I didn't even really care if the consistency was the same, because at that point this thing was pretty much done and soaking wet. You can see now that I've gone all the way around the balloon and covered it with the longer strips. I had a few short strips left, or actually I had a few long strips left over. I cut into like thirds of strips, so they're shorter now. And what I was able to do with those is anywhere where I had like crazy wrinkles or anything I didn't love in the balloon, I could go in and do some patchwork, and basically just layering an extra or second layer of fabric on top of the first layer, which will now make it much stronger because now it's fabric glued on top of fabric. So if you have extra strips, just keep layering your way around, working around to make sure that everything's filled in. So I've got one last little strip here we're going to put in together. And remember, the balloon is soaked, so I don't even need to pre-dampen anything. I'm just going to give it a little bit of love there. And then I'm kind of starting right below the stem now. And the other thing I forgot to point out earlier is, just like any kind of painting, you really always want to paint your strokes with your canvas, right? You want to paint in the direction of whatever you're creating. So with this, you can see I'm just painting down that little strip, and I'm just letting it end where it ends, making sure that everything on the bottom is really nicely covered. Here, so there's our wonderful little pumpkin, and it is wet, and that means that the fabric is going to start to ripple and do different things than you probably expect. I can even see in the camera there's a wrinkle around here somewhere. Okay, so if that's bothering you, right, you can just work your fabric a little bit to pull it taut. That's probably one of our first layers we've put in. We can add a little bit more moisture in there, but what I really want you to do is not fuss too much, because it's going to change as it dries. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to add a new layer of glue each day. Let it dry completely. And every day you add a new layer of glue for 3 or 4 or 5 more days, I want you to make your glue wash thicker and thicker and thicker. Now, I only used $1.50's worth of glue on the big one, so a tube and a half of that glue I was using. So at any rate, this will go ahead and get you dialed in there, and that's going to just, like I said, dry, and then I'll apply another layer of glue. I will keep washing through the rest of this glue on top of that, though, because I don't like to waste anything. Now, I wanted to show you my other little trick. I got glue all over my hands. This is going to get ugly no matter how I do it, but making these fun little leaves or stems that go on here is super easy as well. Now, I use 2 layers of my print because that's what I had. Sorry, I got to lose the gloves. I used 2 layers of my print because that's what I had available, and you'll also need an extra balloon. Let me show you this trick. So just have a couple of layers, and I want you to cut the 2 layers all at once, and then just kind of freestyle yourself a fun little pumpkin style leaf. So they're kind of like a star or a pokey end. And so I'm just going to kind of give myself a little character. And I'm using my little shark cutter here that I've created. And then I'm just going to give myself like little star ends. Kind of like an oak leaf maybe as well. Do be careful as you're freestyle cutting. But basically, I've created a little shape. I'll set it right there so you can see it better. And now that it's like that, what I really want to do is I'm going to actually take and I'm going to glue the 2 layers together first. So just washing over my paper here so I don't get any mess on my set. And I also don't want to get any mess on my fingers if possible because I took those gloves off. So now I'm just going to kind of line this back up. Line that back up. And now I'm going to glue the other layer to the bottom layer. I'm going to flip it over, make sure it's got glue on both sides. And like our pumpkin, we're going to do several layers of glue here, but if you leave it like that, not only is it going to be stuck to the paper when you're done, but it's going to have no character whatsoever. So this is where our other little balloon is going to come in handy, because you can take this, you can then give it some character, wrap it, stick it, give it some corner, give those little leaves some curl and whatnot. And then you can prop that against your other pumpkin or two so that doesn't fall over and you're all dialed in. So, like I said, super simple craft holiday project for you, really fun. And of course you can use all the other supplies out there, the different glues and the decoupages and all of those kinds of things. But I just wanted to do something that was really fun, achievable, maybe something you do with your kids and it really didn't cost too much or was really not a problem if things got messed up. So just grab yourself a couple of easy balloons, a few bottles of glue from the dollar store, a little bit of twine, and just have yourself a blast making these pumpkins. Once everything is totally dry, on about the third day, I went in and popped my balloon because the balloon was starting to shrivel and was doing weird things when I was working with it. So like I said, it's just a super simple project. About the fourth layer, I went ahead and started gluing on the leaves that go with the pumpkin, making it super fun. Of course, you could take a Sharpie marker at this point, or you could use some really fun black felt, and you could put faces on these, like a Mr. Potato Head game or something. Make it great for decorating your jack-o'-lanterns. Won't be a fire hazard, of course, unless you put them near a candle, and then they'll probably blow up. And you know me, I'm just being crazy, being silly and having fun with a craft video for all of you right here today at Making It Fun. Please make sure that you're subscribed. Stay tuned. We do all kinds of great stuff here. Often we include a sewing machine as well. We'll see you next time. Adios, amigos. Stay safe and don't eat too much candy. What? Are you actually still here? That's fantastic. Make sure you check out some more of my other fabulous content right here on YouTube. I think it's terrific. Please subscribe while you're there and make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss another moment of the fun.